20th century history. What shaped the Western world heading into the new century? Prezi is a storytelling and presentation software used to explore and share ideas between people over virtual canvas. Your learning objectives. How to use Prezi in the classroom, learn about the fundamental features Prezi has to offer, gather knowledge on the main themes of the 20th century, possess detailed knowledge about the key advancements in the 20th century. The 20th century saw many wonderful changes in the world, like the first global economy and man's first step onto the moon. However, it also saw the two world wars and the invention of the most powerful weapon known to man. It is easy to see how the 20th century was one of the most innovative and rapidly evolving centuries so far, but it is disappointing to look back and understand how those innovations were driven by mainly military objectives. Simple examples of this would be planes as well as nuclear technology, which were developed first for military purposes and then were redesigned for civilian use later on. While the previous century was defined by industry and the expansion of factories and workers' rights, the start of the following century was defined by the uses of the new industry. Of course, one of the first things that were found out was the astounding military uses of this new industry, which fueled the first industrial arms race the world has ever seen. This influx of military armaments gave new confidence to the nobility of Europe. It was this confidence that lent itself to the people of Europe and led to extreme national pride. This extreme nationalism that was running rampant in Europe, combined with the industrial arms race that was going on, led it to be the only place that could hold the First World War. This war saw the dividing of Europe into the Axis and Allies, as well as the deaths of almost 10 million people, almost all of whom were military personnel. This will mark the first industrial war as well as one of the bloodiest wars fought over the least land in the world. Sadly, this was not as far as Europe was willing to take its individual national pride and its newfound ability to produce weapons at an alarming rate. The peace treaty that marked the end of World War I was known as the Treaty of Versailles and is widely considered by historians to be one of the main causes of World War II because of the state it left Germany in. Germany had no choice but to accept the terms of their defeat, as bad as they were. However, it was the terms themselves that would prove to be impossible for the German people to follow through on. So Germany had to start rejecting the terms of the treaty it had signed by 1932 when it was nearing the worst outage financial depression. One of the main reasons so many historians believe that was the Treaty of Versailles itself, the cause of World War II, was because Germany's need for revenge on Europe that could result in nothing less than a war. An economic boom caused by the end of World War I was mismanaged and turned down onto the Great Depression. The Great Depression was quite simply caused by the massive economic boom that occurred directly after the war, which many historians refer to as the Roaring Twenties. This was a time when the major markets of the world formed the massive bubble due to overinvestment. The bubble burst in 1929, sending the markets of the world spiraling downward into a depression that was only broken by another world war and the governments of many countries being forced to shake off the depression themselves. In 1939, war broke out once again in Europe. However, this war was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before, including the previous industrial warfare, but to a much further extreme which only led to more casualties as well as the introducing of civilian targets to slow down the production of opposing countries. These two things were the main cause of the 65 million people that died in the course of the Second World War. However, once again, Germany was defeated, and once the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, and a little fight left as well. This was how the war ended. It once again defined the next several decades in Europe. Once America had shown its nuclear power to the world, there was a new fear that swept the world that was very different from what would have been felt pre-World War II. Now countries were extremely interested in avoiding war to prevent any more nuclear weapons being used. Sadly, this does not mean the world lost its desire to fight with itself. It only meant there had to be a really good reason now. So when the U.S. was preparing to fight the USSR, every precaution was taken to make sure that the war would not actually occur because it was believed by both sides that it would be disastrous for the world's population as a whole. In conclusion, it is easy to see how the 20th century saw many great advances in humanity. However, it is disappointing to observe that all of these great changes were driven by military means and objectives. Humanity has to rectify its ways or someday suffer the consequences for creating such weapons of destruction without considering the repercussions.